About 3.5 years ago, Benny and I were evicted from a home we had loved for many years. Always the optimist, my response was suicidal. Because, you see, I learned as a child the importance of house pride because I grew up with house shame. It was a 3-room railroad flat in the Bronx. I hated the apartment and I hated the Bronx. I was already a little snob in training. And I hated that all the Jewish immigrants on Marshall Parkway looked alike, talked alike, they even ate alike. Italian on Friday, deli on Saturday, Chinese on Sunday. Plus, Marshall was a long, tortuous subway ride from everything that was important to me. Museums, Greenwich Village, and Broadway musicals. The apartment was cluttered and cramped and depressing. The tiny hallway was taken up by a sewing machine where my father did alterations, which only added to the general clutter. My one refuge was my dollhouse. I hung an antique chandelier over the dining table, and I placed a Persian carpet on the floor, and I put up red velvet carpets on the windows. That was where I discovered that fantasy is a much happier place than real life. And that is true to this day. I mean, what could be more horrifying than the evening news? When I was around 9 years old, an upright piano was delivered by way of the fire escape. This was a common occurrence on our block. No matter how humble the dwelling, there was always room for a piano. That's because a Jewish mother's success was measured by how well her child played Beethoven's Für Elisa. Luckily for me, I played it very well. And that was my ticket out of the Bronx. I got into the High School of Music and Art, which was in Manhattan. And I got to hang out with kids who did not have sewing machines in their hallways, whose parents spoke English as their first language, kids who lived in large, rambling apartments on West End Avenue with grand pianos in the living rooms. When I became a married lady, Betty and I moved into our own apartment on West End Avenue. And the first thing I did was hang an antique chandelier over the dining table and place a Persian carpet on the floor and hang red velvet curtains on the windows and put a grand piano in the living room. I was living the dream. And then there were the neighbors. Our son would play with a rich kid in 3C, Benny would practice his German with the concert pianist in 4A, and the gay guys in 8B gave us free haircuts. We could walk around the corner for dinner and a movie, and chances are we would run into someone we knew. It was like living in small town America without the racists. And then we moved to Los Angeles. Our neighbors were an anonymous succession of young careerists. We had zero contact with them. The only people on the street were walking their dogs, and if you dared to strike up a conversation, they were so engrossed in their phones you might cause cardiac arrest. But we did have a lovely home, a nice big lower duplex built in 1927. It wasn't large enough for a grand piano, but I made do with an upright in my office/guest room. Yes, I had an office, Benny had an office, and we had a dining room, and a breakfast room, and a laundry room, and a front yard, and a backyard. Nice. And then it hit the fan. The walls came crumbling down. The building got sold, and the new owners had plans for the property that did not include us. We were given 12 months to relocate. Now what? We wanted to say the same neighborhood, but rents had skyrocketed since the Grove got built. Our only option was downsizing. Well, hold on a second. I am all about upsizing. This is the end of my precious lifestyle. No more house guests, no more garden parties, no more walk-in closets, and only one bathroom. We're going to end up in a cramped, cluttered, depressing space. We're going to end up in the Bronx. Now, I know that this is a first world problem. I know that most people on the planet don't own a book or a toilet. But I learned long ago that if I don't love where I live, I cannot be happy. And call me shallow, I happen to like happiness. So a girlfriend chastises me for being too materialistic. Why are you making such a drama out of this? I could live in a trailer park as long as Robert will live with me. Really? This bitch happens to reside in a 5,000 square foot villa in the Palisades. I just love it when wealthy people tell not so wealthy people that money's not important. I should have said to her, listen, I've got a great idea. Since you don't think money is a big deal, why don't you give me yours? I couldn't sleep. I couldn't digest my food. Every day, I had an attack of dizziness and palpitations and cold sweats, which I immediately diagnosed, with the help of Dr. Google, as a series of strokes. My physician said that I was just suffering from stress and I should try meditation. He's kidding, right? Let me tell you something about meditation. It only works if you're in a good mood. Meditation would have done jack squat for those people going down to the Titanic. So, I did what any reasonable person would do. I consulted a hypnotherapist. And I listened to the tape of our session every day. I am resourceful. I am brave. I can solve this problem. I am resourceful. I am brave. I can solve this problem. Clearly a load of crap. But my ignorant, unconscious mind was dumb enough to believe it. And so I started sleeping again. I started breathing again. And I began to prepare for the move, which was no daunting task. For starters, we had to dissolve 2 home businesses, which meant figuring out how to unload 10,000 rare books and 2 garages jam-packed with vintage fashion. Plus, there was all our personal treasures. I mean, Chinese deco rugs, tribal masks, California pottery, all picked up on the cheap in thrift stores and yard sales. I held my own garage sales. I sold on eBay. I posted on Craigslist. And it turned out that all this stuff we had amassed over the years was worth a lot more than we knew. And I gotta tell you, it was very satisfying to sell a small piece of Japanese calligraphy for $1,200 for which we had paid $60. So the dreaded move was beginning to have the teetsiest, weetsiest element of fun. Then we had to clear out our offices, and this turned out to be more fun because it was very liberating to get rid of mountains of papers for which really perhaps there was no reason to hold on to in the first place. Like, for example, a Goodwill receipt from 1996 for $3.57. All we had to do was find a place to live. And we had a wide range of options. Of one. Park La Brea, a couple of blocks away from us. Now, since Park La Brea is a rent-controlled, corporate-run community, we had to submit itemized financial and personal and professional histories starting from kindergarten. I can barely fill out my health insurance forms. We had to find proof of this and proof of that and copies of this and copies of that. I am resourceful. I am strong. I can handle this. Wrong again. I couldn't. But Benny could. Score one for marriage. Finally, after months of living in bureaucratic hell, we were approved for a very charming two-level townhouse. Not as large as the place we were leaving, but a lot bigger than the Bronx. Big enough to still have garden parties and house guests. But here comes the miracle of miracles. For the first time since we left Manhattan, we had neighborly neighbors. When Benny had hip surgery, my bell rang every day with offers of chicken curry from the Indian family, homemade matzo ball soup from the Orthodox Jews, mac and cheese from the Midwesterners, and I must tell you something. It's a confession. My favorite thing in the world is free food. Would it be very wrong if I pretended to have cancer? Once again, we can walk around the corner and run into people. Once again, we can walk around the corner for dinner and a movie, and chances are we will run into people that we know. Once again, it's like living in small town America without the assault weapons. You know, there are folks who believe that when something bad happens, something good always follows. Well, those folks would be fucking morons, because that statement is a big fat lie. As a matter of fact, even when something good happens, you better watch out. But in this case, the morons were right. Because the eviction that I thought was a life-destroying catastrophe turned out to be an astonishing piece of good luck.